No being had ever lifted the legendary blade on an uncharted world until the human tried. The twin moons of Vale 4 cast elongated shadows across the obsidian dunes, bathing the alien terrain in eerie shades of violet and indigo. Dax Carter, clad in a sleek midnight blue tactical suit that left his forearms exposed, stood at the precipice of a jagged ridge. Below him sprawled a valley of shimmering crystalline spires. His sharp features and relaxed confidence marked him as unmistakably human, a rarity among the diverse species now settling this newfound world. "You're off course again," came a smooth, teasing voice. "Honestly, I don't think humans have any sense of direction." Dax smirked and turned to face Rylus, his companion and guide. Her silver skin gleamed under the moons, and her deep violet hair cascaded like liquid silk down her back. Clad in a form-fitting suit of dark fabric woven with iridescent fibers, she was as lethal as she was graceful. Over the months they'd worked together, Dax had learned two things. Her beauty was as striking as her wit, and underestimating her was a mistake no one made twice. "Maybe I just like getting lost," Dax countered with a roguish grin. "Gives you more chances to show off your superior knowledge of this place." Rylus rolled her luminous eyes, an expression she had picked up from him. "The artifact's energy is coming from the northern ridge, and you're wandering west. Oh, brilliant one." "Or maybe," Dax murmured, his gaze lingering on her. "I just wanted to enjoy the view." They had been partners for 3 standard months, tracking down ancient relics for the Galactic Preservation Consortium. Their dynamic was effortless, their chemistry undeniable, though they had remained mostly professional. As they crossed the crystalline expanse, Rylus's scanner emitted a rapid sequence of beeps. "We're close," she said, her voice laced with excitement. "The energy reading is unlike anything I've seen before." Turning a corner around a towering crystal, they froze. Embedded in a monolithic slab of jet-black stone was a sword. Its blade, pulsating with an inner glow, symbols shifting along its surface as if whispering secrets to the air itself. "Stars above," Dax muttered. "That's no ordinary artifact." Rylus scanned it, her expression tightening. "Records indicate it has been here since before the first wave of settlers. Every known species that has discovered it has attempted to remove it, using everything from gravitic fields to quantum displacers. Nothing has worked." Dax stepped closer, the blade's glow intensifying as he approached. He studied it for a moment before casually remarking, "Has anyone tried just pulling it out?" Rylus laughed, the sound bouncing off the crystal formations. "Tell me you're joking. The greatest minds in the galaxy have studied this thing for centuries, and you think you can just—" Before she could finish, Dax wrapped his fingers around the hilt. The sword exploded with brilliant blue energy, arcs of lightning crackling across its length. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the very air hummed with raw power. "Dax," Rylus whispered, all amusement gone. "What did you just do?" He turned to her, his face illuminated by the sword's glow. "Nothing, yet." Then he pulled. The blade slid free effortlessly, as if it had been waiting for him all along. The symbols along its length blazed to life, shifting in patterns that felt strangely familiar. Rylus's scanner overloaded, struggling to comprehend the artifact's energy. "This is impossible," she muttered, her silver skin darkening with exhilaration. "The sword is attuning to your biology. It's responding to you, Dax." A sudden, searing vision overtook him. He saw vast fleets of warships marked with the same symbols as the blade. He saw humans, his own kind, wielding weapons capable of reshaping existence itself. He saw an empire spanning the stars, and its destruction. "Dax?" Rylus's voice pulled him back. He was leaning against her, her touch cool and steady. "Your eyes," she murmured. They were glowing like the sword. Dax exhaled, still processing what he had seen. Then, the distant whine of approaching vessels made his muscles tense. "We've got company." Rylus checked her wrist display. "Planetary Enforcement Patrol. They must have detected the energy surge. We need to move. Now." Dax tried securing the sword to his back, but it refused to stay in place. Rylus smirked and stepped in, adjusting his gear with slow precision, her fingers lingering just a second longer than necessary. "The crystal caves to the northeast can scramble their sensors," she whispered. "It'll buy us time." Moving swiftly through the alien terrain, the sword's glow dimmed as if understanding their need for stealth. Every time they neared a patrol, the blade pulsed, guiding them toward unseen paths. As they crouched behind a jagged outcrop, Rylus studied him intently. "You saw something, didn't you?" she murmured. Dax hesitated. "Would you believe me if I told you humans once ruled the stars?" Rylus traced a single finger along his jawline, her eyes glittering. "After watching you do the impossible?" she smirked. "I'd believe anything." A squad of armored enforcers passed dangerously close, their insignias unmistakable, the Consortium's private retrieval division. "This isn't just about an artifact anymore," Rylus whispered. "That sword is rewriting everything we know about human history." Another flash of insight struck Dax. Less intense, but no less profound. He saw ancient structures hidden across the galaxy, waiting to be awakened. The sword was a key, and he was meant to wield it. "We need to get off-world," he said. Rylus grinned. "My ship's in a ravine 2 kilometers east. Think you can keep up?" "Always," Dax replied, grabbing her hand as they sprinted into the night. The sword pulsed, its forgotten legacy unfolding with every step they took. And for the first time in millennia, history was waking up. They didn't take prisoners, only trophies. Usually, body parts. Dax Carter tightened his grip around the pulsating sword as the pursuing ships closed in. "Any chance we can outrun them in these clouds?" he asked. Rylus, hands flying over the ship's controls, smirked. "Maybe if we—" The ship jolted violently as energy fire streaked past them. "Okay, new plan," she called. "See that maintenance shaft behind the cargo hold? There's an emergency exosuit inside. You're gonna need it." Dax grinned even as he unstrapped himself. "We're already improvising? I love it when you get creative." "Just try not to die," Rylus shot back. "I'm starting to enjoy having you around." The shaft was cramped, but Dax managed to suit up while keeping hold of the sword. More visions assaulted his mind, warriors wielding similar weapons, slicing through the void of space itself. "Ready?" Rylus's voice crackled through his comm. "Born ready." "Such a human response," she laughed. "All right, hero. Opening airlock in 3, not 2. The airlock hissed open, and Dax was yanked into space. The crimson storm clouds swirled around him as Rylus expertly maneuvered their ship, using his exit point as a distraction to slip between 2 of the enemy vessels. The sword came alive in his hands, its energy coursing through his suit without damaging it. Acting on instinct, or perhaps guided by the ancient memories embedded in the blade, Dax swung. A streak of pure energy extended from the weapon, slashing through the nearest pirate ship's engine core. The vessel spun wildly, colliding with its companion in a fiery explosion before both disappeared into the swirling red abyss. "By the stars," Rylus breathed over comms. "That was the hottest thing I've ever seen." "Flirt later," Dax grunted, dodging debris. Still one more problem. The final pirate ship had stopped firing. Instead, a guttural voice crackled over every channel. "The human with the energy blade. Our collectors would pay a fortune for such a specimen." Dax smirked. "Sorry, I'm already spoken for." Through the comm, he heard Rylus's delighted laugh as she brought the ship around. The last vessel deployed a cloud of metallic particles, designed to disable energy-based attacks. But this wasn't just an energy weapon. The sword's blue. Glow turned a searing white. Dax felt knowledge surge into his mind, guiding his movements. He thrust the blade forward. This time, instead of an arc of energy, a pulse of gravimetric force erupted from the tip. The enemy ship and its defensive field crumpled into a compressed ball no larger than his fist, then vanished into the storm. "Show off," Rylus teased, aligning the ship for pickup. "You know what this means, don't you?" she asked as he re-entered. "That I'm incredibly impressive and you're madly in love with me?" Dax joked, pulling off his helmet. Rylus stepped forward and kissed him, hard. When they broke apart, she traced a finger down his chest. "That," she murmured, "was for the rescue." Then she kissed him again, slower this time. "And that's for everything else." The storm-racked planet loomed ahead, its endless clouds flickering with lightning. Dax stood at the viewport, the sword humming in his grasp as if responding to the world's raw energy. "No one's ever made it through that," Rylus said, pressing against his side for warmth. "The storms tear apart anything that tries." "That's because they're supposed to," Dax murmured, his understanding of the blade deepening. "It's not a natural phenomenon. It's a defense system. The ancients built it to protect something." Rylus traced light patterns along his arm. "And I suppose you have a plan?" Dax turned to her, their faces inches apart. "I do. But you're going to think I'm crazy." She smirked. "Darling, I already think you're crazy. It's part of your charm." Her hand rested over his heart. "But I trust you." The words carried more weight than any embrace. Dax kissed her softly, pouring his gratitude into the gesture. "The storms are powered by the same energy as this blade," he explained. "If I can synchronize with them—" "You want to override an entire planetary defense system with an ancient sword?" Her violet eyes sparkled with excitement. "That's either brilliant or suicidal." "Possibly both," he admitted. "But I'll need your help. Your people have a natural affinity for energy manipulation. You can help me channel it." Rylus's gaze softened. "You've been studying my species?" He shrugged. "When a stunning alien warrior agrees to be your partner, you do your homework." She rewarded him with another kiss. "Let's save the galaxy first, then we'll discuss your extra credit." As they descended into the storm's heart, the sword's energy surged. Rylus positioned herself behind Dax, her hands resting lightly, on his shoulders. "Ready?" she whispered. "Born ready," he replied. The sword erupted with light, colliding with the storm's chaotic energy. Through his connection to the blade, Dax felt the ancient systems recognize him, accept his authority. But the sheer power of the storm threatened to consume him. Then Rylus's energy joined his, her abilities channeling and stabilizing the surge. Together, they carved a path through the maelstrom. "Look!" Rylus gasped as they broke through. A city stood beneath the storm, its impossible architecture untouched by time, hidden for millennia. "The last bastion," Dax whispered, memories flooding back. This was where they made their final stand. They landed on a platform that cleared itself of dust at their approach. As they stepped forward, Rylus grabbed Dax's arm. "Whatever we find—" "Down there," she said, her voice uncharacteristically serious. "I need you to know something." She pulled him close, pressing against him. "I've traveled with many species, worked with countless partners, but none of them made me feel the way you do. Not just the attraction, though by the stars that's definitely there. But this connection, this trust." Dax silenced her with a kiss, deep and lingering. "I know," he whispered. "I feel it too." The corridors of the ancient city illuminated, at their presence, casting the same blue light as the sword. The air itself seemed alive, charged with forgotten power. "The architecture," Rylus murmured, running her fingers along the walls. "This wasn't just an advanced species. They were gods among the stars," Dax finished, awestruck. At the heart of the city, a holographic display flickered to life. It, showed the galaxy as it had been millennia ago, human fleets patrolling the void, protecting younger civilizations. Then, the images darkened. Rifts in space, entities of pure darkness, the invasion. We weren't just another species, Dax breathed. We were the first, the Guardians. The hologram shifted again, to a massive hangar, rows of dormant warships waiting to be reawakened. As the floor beneath them began to descend, Rylus grabbed his hand. The sword is the key, she realized. But it's not enough, is it? Dax met her gaze, understanding dawning. No, he said. The fleet won't activate for just any human. It needs more. What? She asked. Love, he answered simply. Her breath hitched. That's why the sword led us here, together. Not just because I could help channel its power, Dax murmured, his forehead resting against Rylus's. But because what we have is proof that humanity hasn't forgotten its true purpose. He pulled her close, the sword's radiant energy surrounding them both. We were never meant to conquer or dominate, he whispered. We were meant to protect, to unite, to love. The kiss they shared then was different from all the others, deeper, filled with something beyond passion. As their lips met, the sword's energy surged outward, touching each dormant ship in the hangar. One by one, their engines roared to life, their systems reawakening after millennia of silence. A new hologram flickered into existence, revealing a human woman in ornate military attire. DNA recognition confirmed. Emotional resonance verified. Cross-species bond authenticated. She smiled warmly. Welcome home, children of the stars. The last fleet awakens at your command. Rylus smirked, eyes dancing with mischief despite the gravity of the moment. Just one question. Do I get to be your first officer? Dax chuckled, pulling her closer. Darling, you've been running this mission since the day we met. The hologram expanded, revealing long-hidden truths. Humanity's origins were not on Terra Prime, but among the stars. Earth had been a colony, a place of rebirth after the war against the Voidborn. When humanity had nearly been extinguished, they chose to start over, growing from simplicity back to greatness. Your civilization believes it is only beginning its journey into the stars, the hologram continued. In truth, you are reclaiming your birthright. She turned her gaze to Dax. The sword you carry is one of many keys hidden across the galaxy, left behind to awaken when humanity proved itself worthy once more. An alarm blared. The defensive systems of the storm world detected incoming vessels, dozens of fleets dropping out of hyperspace. The great powers of the galaxy had arrived. Dax stood on the bridge of the fleet's newly designated flagship, Souls. Val, watching through the viewport as hundreds of ships surrounded the storm layer, their weapons primed. The sword pulsed at his side, mirroring his unease. They're hailing us, Rylus announced from her command station, her voice calm despite the tension. She belonged there, her natural grace and confidence making her seem as though she'd commanded starships her whole life. The sight of her, bathed in the ambient blue glow of the ship's bridge, still made Dax's heart race, despite the impending standoff. Of course they are, he muttered. Everyone wants a piece of humanity's legacy. He straightened, inhaled deeply. Let's give them a show. But before he could respond, the sword's energy flared, new visions seared into his mind. Tears in reality. Darkness creeping through the void. The Voidborn were returning. Dax stumbled, gripping the edge of the console. Instantly, Rylus was at his side, her hand pressing against his chest, steadying him. What did you see? She whispered. He exhaled sharply. Something worse than trigger-happy bureaucrats. He met her gaze, his hands closing around hers. The real enemy is coming back, and we need to convince these fleets to work together, fast. Otherwise, there won't be a galaxy left to fight over. Rylus's eyes flashed with determination. Then let's be convincing. Dax opened a channel to all ships, his image projected across every vessel in orbit. The sword's energy flared, amplifying his presence, making him more than just a man. He was a symbol, a voice that carried the weight of a forgotten empire. To all ships in orbit, he began, his voice calm but commanding. I am Dax Carter, awakened guardian of the last fleet. What you see before you is not a weapon to be seized. It is not a prize to be won. It is a warning and a call to arms. He gestured, and the sword's power projected a massive hologram, one that every ship could see. The Voidborn were coming. Rifts in space, unnatural wounds in reality, creatures of impossible geometry seeping through. The bridge of a gone war cruiser flickered onto the comm, its commander narrowing his reptilian eyes. Pretty words, human, but why should we trust you with such power? Dax didn't answer. Instead, he turned to Rylus and pulled her into view. Because I'm not alone. The silence that followed was heavier than any weapon fire. The last fleet did not awaken solely for human DNA, he continued. It awoke because we proved that humanity has learned to love, to connect, to trust, to be more than what we once were. We are stronger together than apart. Rylus stepped forward, her presence commanding as she looked directly into the feed. I've seen his heart. I've felt his power, she said. This is not about conquest. This is about protection, about love. As if in response, the sword's energy surged outward, touching every ship in orbit. Crews across the fleets felt something. Truth, a purpose, long forgotten. Then, the first rift tore open, a wound in space itself. Darkness spilled through like ink in water. Ships recoiled, their weapons locking onto the impossible mass, writhing before them. Dax's grip tightened on the sword. Choose. Now, he commanded. Stand with us against the coming darkness, or watch everything you love be consumed. A moment of hesitation. Then, one by one, the fleets turned. They aligned themselves with the last fleet, ready to fight. A monstrosity emerged from the rift, tentacles twisting into impossible shapes, its very presence warping the space around. Dax raised the sword, its light defying the abyss. Rylus's hand found his. Their energies merged, just as they had in the storm. Together? She whispered. He smiled, feeling her strength flow into him. Always. The void creature lunged. The fleets opened fire, and the last battle for the galaxy began. But deep within, the storm whirled. Something else stirred. The sword's energy tugged at Dax's mind, pulling him back toward the planet. There's something here, he said, turning to Rylus. Something we haven't seen yet. She didn't hesitate. Then let's find it. Fingers intertwined, they ran. The ancient halls guided them, the sword leading them deeper than ever before. Finally, they reached a massive chamber, its doors covered in the same symbols that lined the sword's blade. The Heart of Light, Dax whispered. This is where they made the final weapon against the Voidborn. The doors parted. Inside, suspended in midair, was a pulsing crystalline core, its energy the same as the sword's. It's not just a weapon, Rylus murmured, eyes wide. It's a beacon, a force capable of amplifying the one thing the Voidborn can never destroy. Dax turned to her. What? She smiled. Love. As the void loomed over them, their hands met. The sword rose, and the Heart of Light awakened. The void could not corrupt. It could not consume. The light surrounding Dax and Rylus grew blinding, but instead of breaking under the strain, they clung to each other, bond strengthening rather than shattering. Their combined energy surged skyward, a radiant column piercing the darkness, transforming the planet's eternal storm into a shield of pure light. The void-born entity shrieked, its unnatural voice shattering sensors across nearby ships. But it could no longer hold its grasp on reality. The tear began to close, forced back by a force beyond mere physics. Rylus exhaled, breathless. Now that, she murmured as the glow faded, still cradled in Dax's arms, was one hell of a kiss. Dax laughed, holding her tighter. Think. We convinced them? They looked up through the transparent ceiling of the ancient facility. The combined fleets remained in orbit, weapons lowered, watching as the last traces of the Voidborn dissolved into nothingness. I'd say so. Rylus smiled, tracing a teasing line along his jaw. Though, we might need to demonstrate a few more times, just to be sure. The grand hall of the Storm World's hidden facility had become an impromptu meeting chamber. Gathered around a massive crystalline table sat the most powerful leaders in the galaxy. Representatives from every major faction. Their attention was fixed on Dax, who stood at the head of the table, the sword glowing softly at his side. Rylus stood beside him, not just as his partner, but as an equal force in shaping what came next. The Heart of Light was just the beginning, Dax said, raising the sword. A massive galactic map shimmered into view above the table, each point of light pulsing with the same energy as the blade. Our ancestors left a network of these devices across the galaxy, all interconnected, all waiting to be awakened. A Gallan admiral leaned forward, his tone skeptical but his posture respectful. And you expect us to trust humans with this power? Rylus answered before Dax could. What you witnessed wasn't a display of power. It was a demonstration of protection. Her voice carried the weight of both science and belief. The hearts don't respond to conquest or control. They activate through genuine connection between species. That's why we're here. Dax took Rylus's hand in his, fingers intertwining. We're not asking for control. We're offering partnership. The sword pulsed again, and holograms of detailed schematics appeared, plans for integrating ancient human technology with modern fleets, defensive strategies against future incursions, and protocols for joint operations. The last fleet isn't meant to stand alone, Dax continued. It's meant to stand with you. A Confederation commander studied the data before speaking, her crystalline features catching the light. You're proposing a complete restructuring of galactic defense. Dax shook his head. No, I'm proposing we remember what we once were. He let the words settle before continuing. Humans were never meant to be just another species fighting for power. We were protectors, guardians, but not rulers. The room shifted. A quiet realization passed between them all. Rylus pressed against Dax's side, her voice a teasing whisper. You know, for someone who started this adventure by showing off with an ancient sword, you're turning into quite the diplomat, Dax smirked. I had an excellent teacher in interspecies relations. Their moment was interrupted by the Gallan admiral standing abruptly. The galactic powers vote in favor of this alliance. Our ships and crews are at your disposal. One by one, the factions pledged their support. The framework for a new galactic coalition was forged within hours. Mixed species crews were assigned, ships were retrofitted with hybrid technology, and expeditions to awaken the remaining hearts of light were scheduled. As the meeting ended, the sword pulsed again. Dax saw visions of other artifacts, keys hidden, across the stars, waiting for those worthy enough to wield them. He turned to Rylus, a familiar fire in his eyes. Ready for another adventure? She pulled him close, silencing him with a slow, lingering kiss, drawing murmurs from the gathered. Leaders. Always, she whispered against his lips. Someone has to keep you from getting a hero complex. The second Heart of Light awakened differently than the first. As Dax and Rylus's combined energy flowed into the crystal core, something changed. The ancient device didn't just activate. It transformed them. Power surged through their joined hands, enveloping them in a sphere of radiant blue light. Dax glanced at his skin. Luminous markings traced across it, pulsing with energy. He turned to Rylus. Similar patterns glowed along her silver skin. intricate designs that told the story of their journey together. Rylas's scientific mind raced, even as she pressed closer to him. The heart isn't just awakening, she realized. It's evolving. The sword floated between them, resonating with their newfound energy. Through it, knowledge flowed. Every heart of light granted unique abilities to the pair that activated it. Rylas's fingers brushed Dax's cheek, and suddenly, they saw. Through each other's eyes, not as an invasion, but as a natural merging of two souls intertwined. Dax felt Rylas's deep fascination with humanity, how she had watched him defy expectations, her growing admiration and love. Rylas felt Dax's awe and devotion, his wonder at finding someone who challenged and completed him in ways he'd never imagined. Dax exhaled. The hearts aren't just weapons. He pulled Rylas closer, resting his forehead against hers. They're showing us what we can become. Their bond rippled outward, touching the other activation pairs across the galaxy. Humans and aliens, united. Some gained the power to manipulate energy. Others developed enhanced senses, the ability to communicate across vast distances or even glimpses of possible futures. Our ancestors weren't just leaving us tools, Rylas whispered in awe. They were guiding us towards something greater. The sword pulsed in agreement, showing them a future where the galaxy wasn't just defended, but transformed. Dax smirked, his glowing markings flaring in response. You know what this means, don't you? Rylas arched a brow. We have to test these new abilities thoroughly. For science, of course. She trailed a finger down his chest, leaving sparks of energy in its wake. Of course, she purred. We wouldn't want to disappoint your ancestors. Their kiss sent another surge of energy through the facility, but neither of them cared. This was only the beginning. Across the galaxy, more hearts awakened. The last fleet, now crewed by human-alien pairs, took their places as protectors of the stars. The sword, which had once been a test of humanity's worth, had become a symbol of something far greater. Not just power, not just war, but unity. Rylas's eyes sparkled with mischief. Ready to see what else we can do, Dax activated their shared power, lifting them both into a sphere of radiant energy. With you? He grinned. I'm ready for anything.